Breathing is something that we normally take for granted. We don't consciously think about it, we simply expect to be able to breathe, no matter what we might be doing. But for the millions of people who suffer from respiratory conditions, each breath is a major accomplishment. We're going to discuss how to recognise some of the most common respiratory conditions affecting older people, and the impact this can have on their day-to-day life. We'll also think about the practical strategies that you can think about to help improve the quality of life for an older person living with respiratory issues. Respiratory conditions affect the airways, which include the lungs and the passages that transfer air from the mouth and nose into the lungs. Damage to the airways over time can make older people prone to breathing problems. Some conditions are temporary and relatively harmless, others are chronic, long-term and life-threatening. They can be caused by a number of factors: air pollution, the poor health and working conditions of the past, occupational hazards like dust from coal, asbestos or cement, and chemical vapours, irritants and fumes. It could be socially accepted habits like smoking, or it could be genetic. Two common respiratory conditions are chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and asthma. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, known as COPD, is an umbrella term used to describe chronic lung conditions that limit or obstruct airflow, such as chronic bronchitis and emphysema. The World Health Organization estimates that 64 million people currently have COPD, and that it will be the third leading cause of death worldwide by 2030. In normal healthy lungs, there's a branching system of tubes or airways transporting air deep into the lungs. The airways gradually become smaller, ending in tiny air sacs. If you imagine the inner tube of this wheel as corresponding to those air sacs, then my pump corresponds to the airway. See how it tapers into the smaller airway of the adapter. When air reaches the air sacs, oxygen passes into our blood. At the same time, unwanted carbon dioxide transfers from our blood into the air sacs and is expelled when we breathe out. However, if our airways are damaged or obstructed, like my adapter is now, it's much harder for air to flow in and out of the lungs, and much more difficult to get enough oxygen. And you can see the result. Signs and symptoms of COPD include a persistent cough, coughing up sputum or phlegm on a regular basis, breathlessness or wheezing, and breathing that gets worse in the morning and in very cold or hot weather. People with COPD may also experience a flare-up or an exacerbation of COPD. The person's symptoms will get much worse, sometimes only for a few days, or in some cases the person may become so unwell that hospital treatment is needed.
Well, you feel as though you're going to die. You really do.
Well, I smoked, which was a stupid thing to do, I suppose, but everybody did it. And then gradually got sort of chesty and had to get the doctor in and all the rest of it.
I can always tell if it's coming on because I start getting a rumbling in my chest. And I say, oh dear, it's coming on.
A flare-up or exacerbation needs to be treated as quickly as possible. So, what should you look out for? Signs can be one or more things, like being more breathless or wheezy than normal, coughing more than normal, a change in the amount, colour or consistency of sputum, the phlegm that's coughed up. Other signs could be needing inhalers or nebulizers more often.
Hello, Mary. How are you today? How's your chest?
Oh,
All right?
oh, I need some help.
Okay. You want me to call somebody else to help you? The nurse?
Yes,
Okay. All right.
please.
I'm coming back shortly, all right?
A noisy chest or back tightness or pain, feeling generally unwell or weak, feeling hot and sweaty, a decrease in appetite, blue lips or fingernails, or even confusion and acting out of character. The signs of a flare-up can vary from person to person, so knowing what to look out for is important.
Some of the main signs that we look for in somebody who's having an exacerbation of COPD would be a fever, increased breathlessness, a wheeze or tightness in the chest where the airways become tight and Quite often you can hear that as soon as you walk in the room. You don't need a stethoscope, you know, you can tell.
You also have to know what might trigger a flare-up for the older person in your care, so you can minimise the risk. It could be catching a cold or infection, dust in the air or air pollution, overexertion, improper use of medicines, anxiety, or even changes in the weather, including temperature.
I find it can be very difficult when I'm hot.
Again, you have to know the person. What specific triggers affect him or her? Then you can think about preemptive strategies to try to keep that person comfortable.
Come in.
Hi Mary, I checked the weather. It's going to be really hot. Would you like extra fan?
Yes, that'd be a great idea.
Some triggers I've come across are the weather, and certain items such as flowers and things like that in their rooms can cause triggers for them.
What we do to avoid triggering breathing difficulties is to make sure that we know the residents' needs, so we can eliminate them from their environment.
The second common respiratory condition we'll look at is asthma. Over 300 million people of all ages around the world live with this condition. Globally, 250,000 people die of asthma every year. It's a chronic condition characterised by recurrent attacks of breathlessness and wheezing. Symptoms may occur several times in a day or week for some, or very occasionally for others. When someone with asthma comes into contact with an asthma trigger, the muscles around the walls of the airways contract, narrowing them. Sometimes a build-up of sticky mucus or phlegm will make them even narrower. This can make breathing incredibly difficult, leading to an asthma attack. Symptoms can include coughing, wheezing, shortness of breath, and tightness in the chest. Asthma triggers include allergies or infections such as flu, colds, or other viral infections, exercise or overexertion, extreme emotional reactions such as laughing or getting excited, anxiety, anger, or fear. Some medicines can have an impact, as can cigarette smoke, perfumes, chemical fumes, or pollen. Extremes of weather are factors too, and symptoms can become worse at night. But if the airways can be kept clear and their reactions to triggers suppressed, then normal functions will be retained.
I can't breathe. That's the worst bit. I have to be washed, dressed, everything done for me.
Well, I can't walk anywhere, really. Not any distance. When I was at home, I used to be out in the garden and weeding and general tidying up in the garden.
Living with a respiratory condition can have a huge impact on a person's quality of life, both physically and emotionally. Physically, chronic breathlessness can make even simple movements in the activities of daily living incredibly challenging. The person may feel tired all the time, have difficulty sleeping, find it exhausting to eat, or have a reduced sense of taste due to medications. Breathlessness can even make speaking an effort.
You sound a little bit out of breath at the minute. Are you finding it hard?
It is a bit difficult sometimes.
Imagine how you'd feel if every breath you took was a struggle, if you couldn't move about or speak clearly, if even the smallest physical effort caused you to feel exhausted.
Instead of getting up and going and doing things and going out in the garden, and can't do that. Just walk a little way with a lot of sport. Seems ridiculous, doesn't it?
I used to love my bingo. I couldn't go to bingo. I couldn't do anything. Couldn't go out. Wheelchair. The wheelchair is rubbish because unless you got somebody to push you in it, you're stuck.
The changes to lifestyle can demand constant psychological adjustments, which can lead to stress, depression, and anxiety. And the physical impacts can be intensely frustrating, forcing changes to daily living, favourite activities, and independence. They can also affect a person's social roles, relationships, levels of intimacy, and the way they see themselves. Some people can feel self-conscious, maybe when using oxygen or because of a chronic cough. They might be reluctant to socialise and become socially isolated.
Hi Edith.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
Fine, thanks.
Brilliant. Got this device called an iPad to show you.
Mm.
So staff play an important role by taking the time to talk, finding out what's really important to the person and tailoring activities specifically to them.
Yeah. If somebody has a respiratory condition, this could lead to frustration due to the amount of equipment that they have to take with them. Any medication, it's not as straightforward as just getting up and doing a simple task. They have to think of a lot of things, so this can often lead to frustration.
Often there's an added challenge for people with respiratory conditions, breaking addictions or changing the habits of a lifetime. Cutting out favourite foods to manage weight is sometimes necessary, or quitting smoking.
Oh, I've tried lots of times to give up, and it just didn't work, or I wasn't strong-willed enough or something. But then this time I was unwell and just stopped, and I haven't smoked since.
They got me to stop smoking. Well, I didn't smoke much because I worked at a car factory for 36 and a half years. Yeah.
I used to smoke. That's what everyone says now to you. Any doctors, did you smoke? I went to the doctor, she banged the dust. She said, you've got to stop smoking. And I said, oh, I will. So I thought to myself, I'd give up long ago, but I'd have known that. I didn't think you could ever give it up like that.
For an older person with respiratory issues, kicking an addiction may be one of the most important things they have to do. It can be a huge change in lifestyle, which can add to feelings of anger, distress, or anxiety. When feelings of anxiety take over, some people experience panic attacks, making them feel faint, be sick, or even stop breathing.
Calm down. I'm here.
Often a person will overbreathe or hyperventilate, which can make a situation even worse for someone with respiratory issues.
Do you want me to put some music on for you?
It's essential to provide support for anyone at risk from anxiety. It could develop from a long, slow build-up of stress, or a feeling of losing control over crucial aspects of life. It could be a fear of worsening health, especially after a chest infection or a stay in hospital.
Feeling a bit better now?
I know when she's anxious before she has a panic attack that she will start to shake and she will be asking questions to get affirmation that everything's okay. So she'll say things like, am I going to die? She just wants reassurance that she's not going to die. And quite often, whenever you give the medication to open the airways up, that eases the breathing and it brings reassurance and things generally calm down.
Sometimes I go in there and I find I've forgotten this oxygen thing round my neck, and it's here. And then I suppose I panic a bit or something and have to ring the bell and get somebody to bring the flex in there so that I can start breathing again. It's not a nice feeling.
The best for Mary is to get out of the building. Like normally we have this, if the weather permits, we let her to be on her wheelchair in the garden, seeing the view, or some activity with the entertainer. We got entertainment in the afternoon, that she forget that she got this breathless or she is on oxygen. It really helps her.
Calming techniques can help, like gentle music, relaxation, and breathing techniques. Clear explanations and honest reassurances can also go a long way in helping to reduce distress about health.
I get so worried about losing or forgetting my inhaler.
Don't worry, it's beside your bed. If you do lose it, there's one in the nurse's office.
Thank you.
We can also do simple things to avoid situations that might increase a person's anxiety.
Brought you a lovely cup of coffee.
Like always approaching someone calmly and from the front, in obvious sight, to avoid surprises that may trigger anxiety or affect breathing. So what else can you do to help maintain quality of life for a person with a respiratory condition? As always, remember that everyone is different, and each person with a respiratory condition will have different needs. But there are several important areas that it's helpful to be aware of. Hydration and nutrition play an important part in the life of any older person, but even more so if a person has a respiratory condition. Food is the fuel that the body needs to create the energy for everything it does, including breathing. Eating healthily also helps the body fight infections, and chest infections can be really dangerous for someone with a respiratory issue. Each resident will have individual needs outlined in their care plans for specific reasons. For instance, maintaining an ideal weight. Being overweight can make breathing even more difficult.
Oh, mate.
A dietitian can work with a person to come up with an individualised nutritional plan, but care staff play an essential role in supporting that person to maintain their ideal weight and good nutrition. And good hydration is also essential. Drinking enough fluid helps to keep secretions in the lungs thin and therefore easier to cough up. Not drinking enough may result in the secretions being thick and sticky, further increasing the chances of an infection.
You don't eat so much food. I don't know if that's to do with that. But they keep on about you eating more food, you know. But they're very good here. They'll give you whatever you want for a meal, you know, like if you just wanted soup, they'll do you soup. They're excellent here with the food. I have to say that, yeah.
The prospect of exercise may be daunting for an older person who may instinctively avoid activity that may cause breathlessness or trigger a flare-up. However, this can lead to a damaging cycle of inactivity. The person feels breathless, so avoids activity and movement, which means muscles become weaker, which makes them less efficient, so they actually need more oxygen, which actually results in the person feeling worse, becoming more breathless, and even less able to exercise.
I suppose deep breathing I should be doing. I'm sure there must be lots of exercises I should be doing, but I don't. Instead of getting up and going and doing things and going out in the garden, and can't do that. So you've just got to get used to the fact that you can't do it. But they do we go outside and sit in the garden as often as possible, which is good.
Care staff need to gently encourage older people to move around whenever possible. Often everyday activities provide the best opportunities. Simply walking a little further and more often can help, so allow a person with a respiratory condition plenty of extra time to walk to the dining room at a comfortable pace. Easy household chores or daily tasks like washing and dressing are also opportunities to exercise. And for those confined to bed, physiotherapists can suggest suitable, simple exercises to help prevent that vicious cycle of inactivity. It's helpful to think about the 4 Ps. Plan the activity and prepare the environment. Pace. Go at a steady pace, allow plenty of time and take rests. Pursed-lip breathing during and after activity can reduce breathlessness for some people. And think about position.
You can just sit forward for me and breathe deeply.
After the activity, sitting and leaning forward can help recover breath.
Well done. And sit back and rest. Well done.
Plan, pace, pursed-lip breathing, and think about position.
For a resident with respiratory issues, they have a full activities programme offered to them. We just have to adapt certain areas, make sure that, again, the room's at the right temperature and that they're free from anything that could cause any breathing problems. It's really important to keep people involved and engaged with whatever issue they've got so that they feel part of the environment and also that they enjoy their days, really.
Breathing exercises are an important aspect when caring for a person with a respiratory condition. Always talk to the individual and refer to the care plan to find out what works best for them. Kiri is here to help me demonstrate a few exercises. Thanks, Kiri.
No worries.
Now, like we just mentioned, this can include sitting or standing in certain positions to ease breathlessness. Now, Kiri, if you sit forward with your arms on your knees like this, this helps support the muscles that we use to breathe with, so you can suggest that to your residents to help ease breathlessness. In this position, some people like to visualise a favourite walk and really focus on their breathing. Another thing we can do is we can breathe through pursed lips. This is where we put the lips together like we're about to whistle and breathe in and out, either through the mouth or sometimes in through the nose and out through the mouth, like this. Do you want to try that? Another option is counted breathing. So counting 1, 2 while breathing in and 3, 4 while breathing out. And this helps control the breathing. Should we try that?
Yep.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Thanks, Kiri. Do you think those might be helpful?
Yeah, definitely. I know a couple of people in my home will really benefit from this.
We also have to think about the environment to ensure ease of mobility and reduce risks. If someone gets very breathless when moving around, consider repositioning items of furniture. Think about the person's regular routes, like the way to the dining room or the toilet. Can you make it obstacle-free, but also ensure there's somewhere to sit to catch breath and rest if needed? A strategically placed sturdy item of furniture to lean against might be helpful.
Stand up, Daphne.
If you'll help me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well done. And just walk slowly over to the comfy chair. Okay.
Bear in mind, a person may feel more breathless and weak first thing in the morning.
Well done.
A high-back armchair next to the bed can be a useful transition from lying down to standing up. And think about the soft furnishings in a person's bedroom. Thick curtains, cushions and fabric upholstery can attract or create dust. Consider hard flooring rather than carpet, blinds rather than curtains, and special liners that can be used for pillows and bed covers to help reduce build-up of dust. Good ventilation is really important. Think about how to ensure a controlled flow of fresh air, particularly in bedrooms, to reduce dampness, which might aggravate symptoms. And we have to think about our own impact on the person in our care. Don't use excessive hairspray, perfume or aftershave. Avoid anything that could trigger a flare-up or an asthma attack. Remember, considering simple environmental changes can make a really positive difference to your residents' well-being.
Environmental factors that I personally would think about would be the size of the room, nothing too claustrophobic, the temperature, and make sure that the surroundings, home furnishings and everything are suitable for that resident.
People with respiratory conditions will often be prescribed inhalers, nebulizers or even oxygen to help with their breathing. Your role as care workers is to support residents to use these items appropriately. So let's look at inhalers as an example. Inhaler medicine either relieves breathlessness by opening up the airways or prevents flare-ups. Some residents, especially those who also have a cognitive impairment, may need support in using their inhalers and spacers properly. It's important that people are able to use them with the correct technique and as prescribed in order to get the maximum benefit from them.
Are you feeling better now?
And something practical we can all do is encourage residents to rinse their mouths out with water and spit it out after taking their inhalers, as this will help to prevent oral thrush and other mouth conditions. We can also ensure the equipment is washed, as shown in the instructions, to prevent infection and maintain its function. Some people with severe respiratory conditions are prescribed extra oxygen from a cylinder or concentrator. This is called oxygen therapy, and it requires special considerations. First off, inhaling oxygen can cause drying of the airways, making sputum more sticky or viscous and more difficult to clear. It can cause an irritating dry cough and increase risks of infection. Drinking enough fluid becomes even more important to help prevent the secretions becoming too thick. Oxygen also dries mucous membranes, the mouth, lips and nose, which can be really uncomfortable. White petroleum jelly or yellow soft paraffin will help prevent lips drying and cracking. People on oxygen may also need nasal lubricants, so always check for nasal discomfort.
I put on Vaseline to help my dry lips. Very dry in the morning. The first thing I do is bathe my mouth.
And again, we have to think about the emotional effects of being reliant on oxygen and how isolating it might feel, being in effect tied to these heavy cylinders.
I hate the oxygen because I've got it all the time, no break. If I wake up in the night and I've pulled it out, I leave it. I pretend I haven't seen it out or anything, go back to sleep again. What, you put it in?
Residents using oxygen still need opportunities to interact and be part of life in the care home to promote emotional well-being. The care home may be able to investigate whether portable or ambulatory oxygen cylinders would be an option to help people move about and join in. And if the resident can't come to an activity, take the activity to them. Pure oxygen is pretty volatile stuff. It's extremely flammable, so its essential safety instructions are followed and everyone is made aware of precautions to reduce the fire hazard.
The risk of using oxygen at home is limited by proper storage of cylinders, by displaying the warning signs of residence room and in the storage area, and by the training delivered to staff how to use the oxygen.
So, we've looked at a couple of key respiratory conditions, their signs and symptoms, and how they can affect the lives of older people. Perhaps more importantly, we've seen how even some simple strategies can help improve the quality of life of older people living with respiratory conditions.
Dr. Billingham, he used to say about 2 years ago, he didn't think he would got much hopes for me. He'd done everything he could, you know, and that, but now he says, I can see you reaching 100. I said, you must be joking. Yes.
We started this programme by saying that breathing is something that we all take for granted. Perhaps we shouldn't.